Testing. I see the sound wave bouncing again. Okay, now, so we come to the final part of our chapter in which we're going to talk about fiscal and monetary policies, right? Now, most probably we're going to break it down into two videos, right? The first video, we're going to focus on page 15 of our notes, right? When we talk about some examples of fiscal and monetary policy, right? And the second part, we're going to focus on doing the past papers of this chapter, right? Now, but before that, now, first, two things, right? First, you will be asking why we are not using the textbook because the textbook is way too long, right? 嗱，有興趣自己睇啦 okay? You can read the textbook on your own, right? But I think it's way too long, right? And too long-winded, 太長氣啦，好嘛？ Now, second part, second thing is that first we need to understand there are two words, right, that we need to be able to identify, right? First is called expansionary policy, right? And then the second is contractionary policy. So what exactly is expansionary and what exactly is contractionary, right? Now, in fact, it's very easy. When we talk about expansionary, right, we're trying to expand the economy. So what are we expanding on, right? We are expanding on the output level, right? While when we talk about contractionary, right, we are talking about lowering the output level so that the economy will do a little bit worse, right? 係咪可能太過旺盛啦 Maybe we're doing too hot, for example, right? We want the economy to not do so hot, right? So that maybe to control the inflation and those kind of thing, right? So these two words you need to remember, or else when it comes to exam, they ask you expansionary monetary policy，跟住之後企咗喺度啦，咩叫 expansionary 咧？咁啊大劑啦，好嘛？ Now, obviously we have talked about fiscal and monetary policies already, right? Now, just recap what exactly is a fiscal and what exactly is monetary policy, right? Now remember, monetary policies, we are talking about changing money supply, basically, right? While fiscal policy, we are manipulating government expenditure and or taxation, right? 得唔得？嗱，呢個要記得啦。If you give me the wrong policy, although you get all the correct explanation, you still get 0 marks, OK？ 好嘛？我問你 fiscal，你答咗 monetary 就0分 ，OK？ 好嘛？ Now, before we can proceed to talk about these policies, in which we have already done in chapter 17 and 18, right? We're going to add on top of what we have learned, there's one more layer we call objectives. 原來嚟到呢課我哋要講多個新嘅 concept, okay? There is a new concept or new layer of analysis. It would be on the objectives of policies. 究竟唔同嘅 policy 會有咩嘅 objective 會 achieve 到啦 ？Okay? In general, in our syllabus, right? We're going to have to balance out four objectives, right? 4 objectives. 原來我哋有4個唔同嘅 objective 要去 balance 啊。The first one, ensuring long-term economic growth, in which I've translated for you, is basically what happens to the in the long run output level, or the full employment output level, or the potential output level, right? We want to make sure the YF to be as high as possible. That can be one objective, right? 好啦，第二個 objective 啦 stabilizing price level, which is exactly what the US is doing right now. 點解而家要加息啊？原來話加息 because the inflation is way too serious. So we try to lower the price level or make sure the price level doesn't go up too quickly, right? Third objective is that we try to improve the employment, okay? We try to stabilize the employment level, which I've translated for you. We are talking about the output level. Why? Okay? 嗱，有啲唔同嘅，1同3唔同啊。One is long term, one is basically short run, okay? The short run. This one, basically, we are talking about short run. Because in long run, always revert back to YF, 係咪？我哋永遠講緊個potential output level 啦。And finally, which is the most difficult one, is actually this one, closing income gap or equality, right? 有啲 policy sometimes the policies may not be good for 1, 2, or 3, right? But it is good for closing income gap and bringing equality to the economy, right? Now, unfortunately, these objectives most of the time they may be conflicting，係咪啊？好多時候咧都會有衝突㗎。So this is basically when we talk about evaluating the policies, right? We are talking about how do we balance these 4 objectives. Okay, 冇完美嘅 policy 嘅。We can only talk about whether the policy can achieve something, right? Whether the policy can achieve, let's say, long-term growth, for example, right? 所以冇絕對啱與錯嘅。It all depends on the objectives of the policies, right? Now let's talk about some examples. Let us start with monetary policies first. Why we start with monetary policies first? Because monetary policies, basically, they are doing the exact same thing, right? For example, printing money, okay? Printing money supply increases. Changing discount rate, for example, when discount rates decreases, money supply increases. As to why, I think you should revise chapter 19 and chapter 20 when we talk about monetary policies. Okay, 好嘛？required reserve ratio, for example, RRR decreases, then most likely money supply increases. Open market operation. Remember, open market operation, there are 2 sides, right? We have open market sales and open market purchase. If we want to increase money supply, we actually want central bank to purchase things so that they pay money. So open market purchase. Money supply increases. So what will be the working principle? Basically here, money supply increases, leading to interest rates decrease. 嗱，呢個好緊要啦，係咪啊？ Interest rate decrease. If you remember, cost of borrowing decreases. Therefore, CI increases, AD increases, Y increases. So if we talk about these 4 policies in these directions, okay, we are talking about this as an expansionary, 係咪？如果你 Y 聲 expansionary monetary policies. Okay, 好嘛？ So what objective would it achieve? For example, most likely, it's going to affect price level and employment. Most likely, we are talking about policy objective 2 and objective 3. Most likely, right? Most likely, objective 2 and objective 3. Okay, 好嘛？ Now, whether monetary policy is going to affect 1 and 4, right? It really depends on the question. Okay, for example, you may argue, 有人有機會咁拗 do work 嘅. You may also argue with an decrease in interest rate, so people would want to do more investment. 好啦, with investment, what happens? Maybe our LRAS would increase because production capacity may increase. Now, therefore, YF may also increase. In this case, maybe we can achieve objective 1 as well. Maybe this is mostly a secondary effect, okay? Not exactly the primary effect. Okay, 好嗎？ Now, so here, it really depends on how you argue, okay? It really depends on how you argue your argument, whether they are reasonable or not, right? In this chapter, there is no absolute right or wrong answer, unless you answer in the wrong direction. 你話RRR decrease, money supply decrease， 咁幫你唔到啦，係咪啊 ？RRR 跌咗嘅，你話money supply 少咗啊，所以經濟會收縮啊，幫你唔到啦。OK， 得啦。Now, monetary policy. Okay, now just a revision. The same fiscal policy. Let's do a little bit of revision. Okay, now in fact, we need to be careful to distinguish between direct tax and indirect tax, okay? Because if you remember, indirect tax, mostly this is only going to affect the price level, okay? Because it can be shifted. So what it's going to affect? Mainly AD only. No, actually, sometimes AD, depending on the tax, right? But most of the time, SRAS, okay, actually, going to affect SRAS. Is there going to be any effect on LRAS? No, 因為佢淨係影響 price level 啫嘛。No effect. Maybe AD, I don't know. Maybe, depending on what kind of tax, okay? Depending, okay? But mostly on SRAS. Therefore, what kind of objective can it achieve, right? Mostly 2 free, okay? Mostly 2 free. 係咪？主要都係2、3嘅啫。One definitely cannot achieve. Indirect tax 影響唔到 long run 嘅，一定去唔到 free. What about 4? Now, if you remember, most indirect taxes will be regressive tax. So it's going to affect number 4 as well, in a bad way, okay? Maybe in a bad way, maybe in a bad way. Unlike indirect tax, direct tax is going to affect a lot more. For example, if you remember, direct tax cannot be shifted. Therefore, we are going to directly affect investment at least. And C, because of YD, decrease in YD or decrease in profit, right? Therefore, definitely going to affect AD. 肯定啊，呢個唔使問啊，一定受影響嘅。And then, last video, we also talk about something we call disincentive effects, 記唔記得？ So this one is going to affect most likely SRAS as well. If this incentive effect continues, maybe, okay, I said it's a maybe LRAS, that will be effect as well. Now, therefore, direct tax is going to affect 1 to 4. Now, so a lot of times when the economy is not doing so good or doing too good, right? Government loves to affect direct tax. 因為 direct tax 個 effect 係長遠好多嘅 ，it's much more far-reaching effect because it cannot be shifted away. Therefore, it's going to affect AD as well. Unlike indirect tax, mostly is going to affect SRAS only. 嗱，所以呢兩個要分得好清楚啊。呢兩個分得 you see the objective wise, at least indirect tax cannot achieve long-term economic growth. 一定唔得嘅，一定做唔到呢個㗎。Okay, no effect. While direct tax is going to have effect on 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. 好啦 what about subsidy for business? Okay, if we have more subsidy for business, most likely people would do more investment. Therefore, AD will be a factor. 但記住喎 with more investment, maybe you can argue, right? We have more production capacity, right? Which means SRAS and LRAS may also be a factor. Okay, so this one may be 1 to 4 as well. Here, direct tax most likely 2 and 3. Of course, 4 as well, right? 好啦 what about cash and transfer payment? If you remember how it works, disposable income increases. So C increases, so AD increases, for example, right? But is it going to affect short-run AS and long-run AS? Most likely not. 呢個影響 consumption 為主嘅 okay? So this is AD. So most likely, this one 2 to 4, but not quite on number 1, long run. Okay? 嗱，所以啦 up to now, I think you should see this one, number 1 is the most difficult to achieve. 最難去處理嘅 most likely long run, long-term economic growth is the most difficult one to deal with. Okay, all the other policies most likely is going to affect 2, 3, and 4. Okay, 2, 3, and 4. 好啦 spending on infrastructure 成日都話啦 infrastructure increase 嗱咁同上面一樣咯 most likely these 3 would also be a factor. So it will go 1 to 4. Spending on education, and especially, right? Education, most likely G would increase. So AD will increase. On another hand, we have our capacity would also increase. So most likely LLAS will be affected. SLAS may be affected. I don't know, right? But here you see, then 1, 2, 4. So boys, again, in exam, most likely they will give you one fiscal, one monetary, and ask you to balance them out. Okay, Oma, if you remember, we did the same for our final examination in Form 5, right? Oma? So these are the basic idea. Boys, this box, please, you need to recite these 4 objectives because later on in the next and final video, we're going to look at some past paper in which you're asked to evaluate policies. When you evaluate policies, you need to start using these 4 pointers so that your answer will be more systematic. Okay, so this short video, we have done a very simple revision on fiscal policy and monetary policy. We also remember what is expansionary versus contractionary policies, right? We also study the 4 very important objectives and sometimes conflicting policies, right? In the next video, let us then go to the final video of doing exercise. All right, I'll see you in the next video then. See you soon.